I think what we'll do now is invite Rob and Ben back to the stage, and we'll take some questions. Okay. Thank you. I think we've got a microphones ready. Has anyone got any questions?
So, with the council being scrapped for cash, how can local governments and national governments like afford these plans to create like healthy streets?
Should I?
Yeah, go for it.
So the question was, how can local authorities or the national government afford to invest in these kind of schemes? A very kind of factual response. Certainly in Altrincham, the money was from Section 106 funding associated with new developments. It was invested. I think the other benefit of being able to show the monetary value across the whole spectrum of benefits is that you can provide, it justifies funding from other sources. It's about dealing with the issue at source rather than further down the line where it could actually be more expensive. So we've managed to justify drawing down funding from other sources as well. I don't know if Ben has anything to...
Yeah, I mean, and it's not always about big schemes and big funding. So the example I've shown was about a £12.8 million scheme, which is massive. But it can be as simple as a bollard. So we've got schools in Camden who've just blocked off the access to the school by car, just by bollards that you can move up and down. So they're bringing up during school runs and then down in between school runs. And that has great benefits for the streets and for active travel in general. So it's not always the gold-plated schemes that deliver the most.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. I've got a question for Ben. You said that there's you kind of need to be trained to implement the healthy streets approach. Who gets that training and how do you go about that?
Right, so we are in the early stages of developing that training. So currently we're talking with borough officers and with some of the stakeholders like advocacy groups and developers about the concept of healthy street approach and how we're taking that forward at TfL. But we will meet with every single borough individually to train the officers to use the check and how to interpret the results. And we're setting up an audit process to make sure that when they use it, the scores are reflective of the actual design of the actual streets. So this is in development, but in the coming months you'll hear more and more about it.
Now, are there any plans to, or is there an aim to expand it beyond London, or is it a very London specific?
Oh, it can be used, well, some of the data you need is London specific. So for instance, we've got a metric on air quality and it uses the model, the NO2 model that is specific to London. But other cities have developed similar models and it could be exported elsewhere. Obviously, every city have different design guidance. So the score might be a little bit different. I mean, the recommendation might be different. But yeah, it's applicable to any streets.
Thank you.
Hi, Luis from UCL. Ben, regarding the question about health streets, there's any talks to also measure how much is not being spent in health or in traffic injuries as a metric showing the financial appraisal? So I will invest 1 million into specific project, but in the end I'll be saving this amount of money.
Right, so it's not part of the Healthy Street Check, but have you heard of the HEAT tool that was developed by the World Health Organization, which basically helps you monetize the health benefits of your scheme? And that does exactly that. So by getting people to walk and cycle more, they're getting more active and you can evaluate how much money you'll save in treatments from the NHS, basically. So that's a tool that's available and widely recognized internationally that you can use on every scheme.
Okay.
Hi. I'm curious, Paul, with the sort of green streets or however you define them, practically, I'm kind of used to road layouts. Like I know two lines and the crossing, and almost all of them show kind of an arty take on a street. You remove the lines, change the way the crossings look. Do you find people are confused by that and the new layout? Because it appears that there's just no rules now. You can drive there, you can walk there, you can put tables and chairs. But personally, I've only seen some semi-pedestrianised zones, and I was confused. I'm sure the local people aren't, but I walked in, there's a car just appeared out of nowhere, and I thought, I thought it was supposed to be walking here. So, what kind of understanding issues do you have, and what are you doing towards that?
I think just as a starting point, impacting on the traffic and creating what are being referred to as shared space schemes isn't necessary to achieve healthy streets. It's just one mechanism or one means of reducing the impact of traffic and freeing up space for other uses. Part of the philosophy is that it introduces an element of confusion, and for the drivers in particular, that causes reduced speeds, results in reduced speeds and more awareness, more engagement in their environment. You think if you're driving along a traditional street, like you say, with your curbs and your guardrails, a lot of the time, no matter what's going on around you, you're not engaged necessarily in your surroundings. You can quite often get from A to B without even realising it. Similarly with signal controls, and it's something that we experienced in Poynton and Altrincham. Two points. Firstly, when you're driving, or a pedestrian looking to cross a controlled crossing, your eyes are on the signal, you're not paying attention to other users. If someone misinterprets that signal, so if the driver misses the red light or the pedestrian does, then you're going to have an accident. What we try and promote is that actually you should be engaged in other users. The other issue with signal controls that we've experienced is people tend to speed up to get through the junction. Whereas if you take the signals out, everyone approaches it much more calmly and slowly. It's not a silver bullet because it does introduce issues around the visually impaired and how they can cross the street. And there's a whole raft of different research packages that are ongoing about how we can achieve the benefits associated with removal of signals, but still make it safe and comfortable for all road users, essentially. So it is confusing. That's part of it, and it results, at least in theory, and certainly in practice on the schemes that we've delivered, in a safer environment.
Hello, hi. Could you tell us your thoughts about the future transport system, self-driving cars, and their impact on the way we organize our cities? Could we hear your thoughts about this
Does
topic?
anyone else want to take that one? Or?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a broad subject. There are obviously benefits and risks associated to that. So, in terms of benefits, for instance, it might help us at TfL to develop automated bus services in outer London, where we don't have the densities to support a traditional public transport service. And by having these smaller vehicles automated, you may, have cost savings and be able to service these areas that are currently car dominated. But obviously there are a lot of risks as well. So, for instance, it might become safer to drive to be in an automated vehicle because you don't rely on human error. But it doesn't remove the issue of car dominance. You still have to park these cars somewhere. You still have to get them on transport corridors, and it won't necessarily improve the experience of people walking and cycling in the streets if it's still car dominated, and that's not what we want to achieve. So there are both risks and benefits, but it's still not well understood, I think, and it's still being analysed.
I think from an air quality perspective, I'm not aware of any literature. I'm sure there probably are papers that have done the thought experiment of putting autonomous vehicle fleets out, looking at the emission factors. The rule of thumb would be that the less accelerating and decelerating that you do, the more that you control the emissions. So you would get a modest improvement in emissions. But I think the much bigger prospect here in vehicle transport is removing the internal combustion engine. That's just going to make a massive difference to where the pollution is being emitted and how it moves around the urban fabric.
Okay. Probably got time for just one more question. Just behind you.
My question is a bit about sort of the air quality, and in particular, sort of to what extent do you think sort of urban design and sort of the schemes which you've been talking about today can actually be a solution in terms of improving air quality, and do we need to be considering things like carbon capture more into our urban design? Like, to what extent can just changing like urban design and street form actually make a difference?
It can make a massive difference, and I did try to get that message across, but I guess I was pushed for time. So actually, by doing what I understand as an atmospheric scientist about what good planners and developers do, bringing the place you live and the place you work close together and the place you shop, so that you get in your car less. That is the most important thing you can do, because that removes the source of the pollution that is our big issue in cities in the UK currently. So there's a huge job that urban planning can do. Making cities interestingly crinkly was the way that a planner described it to me recently, is exactly the right thing from an air quality perspective. It just helps dispersion and prevents that pooling in the wrong place. So I think there's lots and lots that planners can do right from the get-go to help air quality.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much for spending time with us. Round of applause for us.